Welcome to Turing Boundaryless event. Thank you for being here. I am Monica Lena. I work for Turing and I'm a senior manager for developer marketing. Today we have a great lineup of speakers and we are going to start with a great speaker. She is Carolina Astaiza, head of people from Clara. So we're going to start. Thank you, Carolina, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Monica. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm excited to have you in this interview and to be with all the Turing people and all the people that is going to be able to see this video.
Thank you, because I know you have a lot of experience in terms of remote work, creating culture, managing teams. So we're going to start with this interview. How do you go about the processes of establishing universal company values for a business while also staying mindful of unique cultural differences within members of your global team?
Well, Monica, I'm going to tell you something at the beginning. Once the values have been established in a company, and I'm going to tell you all the audience here, for sure, all our companies had a set of values that are very important in our culture. But we as people leaders of the companies, is very important to define the behaviors related to that company, to that values, to the values of the companies, because it's evident that the values has to become very habitual. It has become like a ritual in our daily basis, or in our business as usual activities. For example, if we are going to talk about data, I'm just giving an example in here, and we're a company oriented and want our people to be data oriented, one behavior will be something related to, why don't we start every single conversation with a number, for example? So having different rituals in our company that accompany our declaration is very important. In our case, in Clara, which is a fintech company in Latin America, we have one-on-one sessions with a methodology, a feed forward, which is the feedback with a methodology also. We have something called regresses, which is a recognition scenario for all our Claridians. So I will say that's my advice, if I can give you an advice for sure. It's transform your value in a specific behaviors, and that behavior has to be part of our daily routines with your people, and it'll be very helpful for all the employees in a company.
That's great. That's super interesting. And I love the way you say the Claridians, because I know that it's something that attach, like people to that sense of being part of the company, and the audience that is watching, take notes, because these are great advice from Carolina. Moving to the next question. With an international distributed team existing across multiple time zones, countries, and regions, what would be your advice to managers who are concerned about the potential for burnout and lack of work-life balance, which I think it's a very big topic since the pandemic?
Great topic, great challenge, great preoccupation for all the people all around the world. And we in Clara, we have people in Latin America, North America, Central America, South America, even Europe. So for sure, that's a challenge we have in our daily basis, because we're working in different time zones. So I'm going to say that if I wanted to give another advice in here, or something that is working for me, I will go with three specific topics. First one is technology, but not all the technology. I'm talking about collaborative tools. That will be the first one. And I will say the Google Suite, I will say Asana, I will say Slack, for sure, I will say Loom, but it's not just the implementation of the technology, but sometimes that's kind of a mistake. It's not just using the technology, but the adoption of the technology, which means that you need to give the people not just the tool, but what are going to be like the main hacks to use that tool. That will be the first one. The second one is we as leaders and all the people, we need to get used to asynchronous work. I mean, it's good to be online all the time, but it's kind of tired sometimes. I mean, when you go to, we have felt this for the last 2 or 3 years. We go to one meeting, then go to another one. You don't even have time to go and have a coffee most
Yeah.
of the time, because you're closing one meeting and open another one. So sometimes you need to understand that there is another people in the other side of the world, the country, or your computer that can be off for a while and working in a different rhythm like you're done. So trust the asynchronous work, because it's very important that you give those spaces. We used to have 8 hours to work. Now we are having like 24. I mean, maybe I don't want to sleep right now. Maybe I want to work. That's another one. And the third one, the most important to me, is have clarity in your objectives, in your OKRs, but especially in your expectations.
Yeah.
If you want to see the people connected in certain time of the day, just let them know. It's important to me to see you, but understand that there is important for them also to be off for a while, because you need a reboost of energy. You need to go to the gym for a while. You need to go and get your kids, but you already know what will be your OKRs and your objectives. And if you're okay with that and you're accomplishing that, I mean, everything is going to be fine. It requires a routine and a discipline in order to have these three items to work in a very aligned way.
Yeah, definitely. And when you say about, like the rhythm, I think it's very important because not everybody works, like the same pace, or they have different types of, like active pauses, or I need 15 minutes to take a coffee. So I think that's something great, because sometimes we take that kind of for granted because we think that other people it's like us and they're working. So I think that's a very interesting and important point that you are mentioning.
Exactly, Moni.
Okay, so within Clara, how does the company celebrate and recognize the cultural diversity of your global teams?
And that's a very important topic in here, and that's something I love about my company. And it's this is a company that born during the pandemic, so we are originally a remote company, but what we have learned at this point is that we have formed communities with our Claridians, so we can recognize and share our diversity. And I will say that we have formed different groups originally online. When I'm talking about online, I'm talking about LinkedIn, I'm talking about Slack, I'm talking about our platforms, our different groups. But we have different groups that related with women, with social activities, an ex-Claridians group also, a gender group, a pride LGBT group, hobbies, which are different hobbies, pets. We also share groups related with pets, regions, because we are in different regions all around the world. So we make it part of our daily basis, information groups, activities. And as I said in your first question, Monica, we are creating routines also related with those groups, different activities that are part of our huge cultural calendar. So we can live in platforms for sure, but we can also live live, because we don't really have like offices everywhere, but we have communities everywhere. We have our office and community in Mexico, office in Brazil, but we also have communities in Colombia, in Argentina, in Peru, in the United States. So we're trying to have both types of communities on a culture calendar, so we can share the different things that we do. And that being part of our working agenda makes that cultural activities and social activities parts of our lives. And that's something that we really appreciated a lot and that we recognize a lot to all our Claridians.
So that's great, Carolina. That's the end of the interview. I really want to thank you not only of being here, but also for your advice, your experience, and the great job that you are doing at Clara. So thank you for being here. And thank you for all the audience for being here as well. Stay tuned, because next we are moving with another speaker.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you for your time. And thank you to all the Turing community.
Okay, welcome to Boundaryless conference and moving forward with this amazing lineup of speakers. Now we are going to talk to Dominic Boon. He is Vice President, Talent and Organizational and Development in Liberty Latin America. Thank you so much for being here with us, Dom.
Thank you for inviting me, Monica.
Okay, so I know that you have a lot of experience managing talents, cultural organizations, but how do you build and maintain a unified corporate culture in a world where your company no longer has dedicated offices?
Well, we're in 24 different markets, so we have a lot of diversity, people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different languages. So it's very important when we're on a video call that we make it as inclusive as possible. So whenever we hold a webinar, for example, we celebrate where people are from in the chat function. We ask them to say, introduce themselves and say where they're calling from. We try to make sure we know how to pronounce people's names. We're very careful to facilitate with a main speaker and then someone managing the question and answers for us, and somebody also observing body language and how the call is going so it's inclusive as possible. We encourage people to use emojis, reactions, to use the chat function. And we like to have live polls and translations wherever we can so that everybody, no matter where they're from, across our business can feel involved in the call.
Yes, that's great, because I think it's important, as you say, make inclusive all of the cultures. Also, it's an opportunity to learn about other cultures, countries, and the names, as you mentioned, it's very important because sometimes we see how it's written, but the pronunciation is different. So I think it's a great practice, like to get it together and feel part of an organization.
Yeah, sure.
What are the main challenges for remote workers and distributed teams, and how were you able to overcome these challenges?
Well, I think for distributed teams, they need to feel part of something, to have a sense of purpose and a sense of team. And if someone is in one market, someone is in an office, someone is working from home, they all have different contexts. And many of our teams in our business are spending time at home and also in the office. So we're trying to work through that to make sure that or whenever they're in a call, they know the right behavior and that we improve and get to hold effective team meetings wherever possible. So we started experimenting now with breakout rooms, with brainstorming, with using different whiteboards, etc., just to try to create different types of dynamics on the calls that we hold. But it's not easy. I don't think anybody has the right answer yet. And it's a case of trying to be brave, experiment, learn, get feedback from what people liked and what they didn't. And we'll all make progress on it.
Yes, that's great. And feedback, as you say, I think it's very important to understand what the employees are feeling and what is working best for them.
Yeah.
Do you think remote will continue, and what are the trends that you are seeing, how you are managing that today in your business?
Remote will continue for sure. We are trying to experiment with getting some people back into the office for some of the week. And I know many organizations are doing that, but at the same time, maintaining the flexibility, also maintaining that productivity that you get when you work from home. I've read reports that it's up to 13% more productive to do virtual work, but it really does depend on the type of task and the role that someone's doing, or even the activity and the place where the team is at. So if there's a crisis, or if there is a moment to talk about the operating model, sometimes those moments are better when it's face-to-face, or when we have a new starter or a graduate coming into the business. Having those opportunities to network and get to know people is critical for us. But we've learned in the last few years that there's a lot you can do virtually. And, for sure, in the pandemic, we did things like live bingo, live yoga and fitness, meditation, Some of our virtual town halls have become like TV shows with a panel of speakers and some very dynamic presenters. So, I think it's a really exciting time to be looking at this kind of technology, to be learning everything that we experienced in the pandemic and improving work for the future.
Yeah, that's great. And one final question. I know that you have with your employees and within the company a great people culture during, like doing a lot of things so they can feel good either on their remote work or on site. So how do you plan to continue this? Do you see changes moving forward because people moving in some days into offices? So how do you think you can maintain building this great people culture?
Well, I think being human-centric is at the heart of it all. So thinking about what the individual employee needs and making sure the manager adopts a servant leadership style. So the manager is no longer there to tell the employee what to do. They're there to get the best out of the employee, to understand their personal situation, and to support and help them to be at their best. And that is the key to it for me, is training managers, getting them more used to this style of leadership. And we do that by surveying our employees to see who the best managers are. So we in our annual engagement survey, we look at the scores of the employee when they're ranking their manager for feedback, motivation, etc. And we find the best managers and we showcase them, we recognize them, we learn what it is that they're doing, and then we share it with the rest of the business. So for me, the key for the future is getting the managers more comfortable with this new way of working and getting them to think about how they can best support their teams.
Great. And if you would give an advice to work, like from home and to have that life-work balance that everybody is looking for, what would your advice would be? What would you tell them?
That's a great question, Monica, and I have a clear view on that. My view is have a look at your diary on a Thursday or Friday for the following week and be very strategic about where you're going to spend your time. So if there is someone visiting from another country in your office, think about, does it make sense for you to be in the office? If you have a performance management conversation with someone in your team, maybe it makes sense to be in the office. Another day, it might be quieter. Maybe you've got a backlog of emails, so you plan to be at home working through those emails and spending some time in a focus mode. So my view is plan ahead, be very strategic, find out where your colleagues are going to be the following week, and then you'll make the best use of your time.
That's great. Thanks for the advice, Dom, and thank you for being here with us. It's been a pleasure. Thank you again for being at Boundaryless.
No problem. I enjoyed it. Thank you, Monica.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Boundaryless. My name is Max Rollinger. I'm the head of events and partnerships for brand marketing at Turing. And we're joined today by DeVaris Brown, who's the CEO and co-founder of Meroxa, to chat about the importance of diversity and inclusivity in distributed teams. DeVaris, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Max. It's a pleasure to get to talk about things that are near and dear to my heart.
Amazing. All right, so let's get right into it. So one of the things that makes Meroxa very unique compared to a lot of other Silicon Valley tech startups is the fact that 62% of your employees identify as a person of color, and then 82% of your leadership team identifies as a person from underrepresented communities. So my question for you to start off is, when you founded the company in 2020, was intentionally curating a diverse team a key element of Meroxa's mission statement, or is that something that became more of a focus as the company continued to scale over the past few years?
No, great question, man. It was 100% a focus of my co-founder Ali and I, right? Like we know all of the stats around diverse teams build better outcomes, and all of that. But really what we understood between each other is that we have an opportunity to do something great here, and we want to make sure that the success is also equitable as well, success and the opportunity. And so beyond just, you know, checking boxes around diversity and things like that, we, you know, spent time thinking about and crafting the culture that we wanted to bring people in. So like a lot of people think about DEI work as just recruiting, but it's also, you know, recruiting, retention, and advancement, right? And so, you know, on top of all of that, like the good recruiting that we do, we're very intentional about onboarding, and then every role that we has a career ladder as well, right? So people understand what it is to get to that next level. So at the end of the day, if we're successful, you're gonna do a lot of great work. You're gonna have the title that you want. You're gonna have, you know, the financial rewards in your pockets and things like that. And we want to make sure that you know, we hope Meroxa can be a forever place for people, but we want to create alumni, not just ex-employees, right? Like we want to have that Meroxa mafia that they're proud to say that they worked here and of the things that they've done, and you know, wouldn't think twice about referring people into us, or you know, even after their 10 years pass, like referring to us in the glowing light. So all of that in mind was that, you know, we were very, 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 very intentional about creating that environment and you know, creating a company that looks like the rest of the world. It's not really that hard, right? Like that's the thing that is so funny to me. It's like people are like, oh man, it's so difficult. It's like, not really. You know, you just look at your team and you look at the census stats and you're like, you know what? Half the world is women. Maybe I should make my team look like that, right? And it for me, it's just like, okay, well, that's just something that we can aspire to, and continuously try to do that, and not beat yourself up if you can't do that, but just make sure that you are in earnest, putting your best foot forward to achieve that. And it's worked out for us.
So you talked about your team members. So right now you've got team members in North America, Europe, Middle East, and you know, you also have a significant number of developers and engineers who are based all over the world internationally. So, you know, you just referenced this, but I guess as a follow-up, how has your team gone about the process of not only creating a culture of diversity and inclusivity in your US team, but also on a global scale? Were there any like unique culture challenges that you encountered as you expanded your talent base overseas, or was it just kind of like a similar curation process as it was when you built out your team here in the US?
Well, I think the advantage is, and this is why I tell people, is that you have to get out of your comfort zone and your box. So Ali and I, well, Ali is from London. I lived in London for a while. Like Ali worked in Dubai, grew up in Libya, like, you know, that whole thing. And so we have this worldly perspective around just going and finding people that and relating to people that you know, that might get overlooked and things like that. And so we've partnered with some of those like hiring exchanges, much like Turing, and you know, all of that. But you know, we get to see some great candidates. There was a friend of Ali's, started a group called Manara that focused on getting women in the Middle East jobs. So what a lot of people don't know is that the women in the Middle East, they go to school and they got PhDs in computer science and things like that, but there's not oftentimes a job waiting for them at the end of the tunnel, right? And so we linked up with them and found some great engineers there, and like, you know, just kind of word of mouth. Same thing with you know, the folks that we have in Eastern and Central Europe. You know, we found them you know, in rooms where it was Golang focused, data focused, and things like that. And it's like, okay, well, now we can, you know, just show them like, hey, there's a place for you to go work. And for me, like when I had my company in London, and working with that, like we outsourced to Eastern and Central Europe all the time. And so I already knew the quality of the people and like where to go and, you know, like that type of stuff. And I think for me, just having that experience, to know that talent is universal, right? Like there's no shortage of talent, but the opportunities are the things that are usually just gated. And so if you can do a little bit more work and a little bit more digging, you'll find somebody that's extremely talented, extremely experienced, but honestly might not cost as much as a Silicon Valley engineer, right? And like that's what's been our been our process, and something that's propelled us forward to hire the types of people that we need.
So something that really stood out to me, just as I was learning more about Meroxa, is the part of your mission statement that says that we believe that with the right tools intentionally built with people from marginalized communities, we can empower everyone to realize the benefits of real-time data. So that's a statement that certainly you don't see every day when you're browsing around websites of leading tech companies. So my question for you is, why is that critical on both like a local and global level from where you sit as a CEO?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, I'm old school Microsoft, man, and one of the things that there's a famous story that people at Microsoft tell you, but the little red squiggly line for misspellings and things like that.
Sure.
That was actually developed as an accessibility feature, so screen readers could tell somebody that, hey, you spelled this thing wrong, and it can actually be a visual representation. I'd be like, oh, I hit a bump, so let me say this out loud, right? And it's one of those things that it seems obvious as hell now, but it was revolutionary because somebody who had a disability, was not of the majority, built a solution for them to be able to be productive. And I think looking at the industry, the data industry, it's one of those things where it's kind of like the haves and have-nots, right? I mean, you can get into all the algorithmic stuff and all of that, and the ethics around AI and all of that. But I'm just thinking about from a resourcing perspective that it's usually people who are doing real-time data have a ton of money, ton of resources, a ton of expertise that they've gotten over the years. And it's been kind of this insular group. And for us, it's kind of like, well, the marginalized community that we have is just everybody else, right? Like we know that we need real time. We know that we need this data to provide better, more relevant contextual customer experiences. But like at the end of the day, they just don't have the resources, the expertise, or just the experience to know how to best leverage it. And so if we can do that and democratize from a tooling and platform perspective, then the world will flourish at that point. And I think that that's kind of a way that we look at everything that we do as a company, is to make sure that the experience, whether it's onboarding, whether it's day-to-day sprint work, whether it's how we interact as a team, we always try to be respectful. We always try to be inclusive. We always try to understand who's going to use us and really, really be empathetic to how we can solve problems for them. And I think with that intentionality, whether it's local or global, you're going to have some success. You're going to build some great relationships, right? Like everybody wants to have this emotive relationship with the platforms and things that they use these days. It's no longer, the enterprise contract that I've signed for $1 million, like it's just thrown over the fence. It's like, no, I want to know from top to bottom, is your company, sustainable? Is it doing the right things? And, just like you want that, and it's required now. And that's really the intentionality we use in setting this up and developing. And really that's part of our company culture and goals, just from the onset.
That's fantastic. So in closing, if any of our audience want to go out there, learn more about what you're up to at Meroxa, can you just give us the quick overview of what your team is working on, what your plans are for 2023?
Yeah, so Meroxa is a streaming application platform as a service. And basically what that means is that we want you to have a code-first way of ingesting, transforming or stream processing, and just orchestrating data in real time for whatever it is that you want. And right now, you can write these real-time data applications in various languages, Go, JavaScript, and Python. We have Ruby, Java, and C# coming soon in 2023. But like that's what we want to do. We want to enable more engineers to develop these applications without having to worry about complex infrastructure. And I think that's really the goal. We got a lot of interesting things coming out that I can't really talk about right now, but the main thing is that we're going to have more language support, and I think meet more people where they're at so that they can also too get the benefits of this platform.
Amazing. All right. DeVaris Brown, CEO and co-founder of Meroxa, was our guest. And thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And looking forward to seeing you soon. So thanks again so much for taking the time.
Thank you so very much. And I hope you all have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you for being here. Welcome back again to Boundaryless from Turing. And now, moving forward with this amazing lineup of speakers, we have a very special guest. She is Sharon Nishi, and she is the Managing Director for General Motors Egypt and North Africa. So thank you for being here with us, Sharon. We're very excited to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. It's terrific to be here with you too.
Okay, so I know that you've been working from a lot of places in the world, and you had the opportunity to work in Canada, the United Arab Emirates, and now in Egypt throughout the course of your career with GM. So have those experiences working across multitude of regions and cultures impacted how you view the world from a professional and a personal lens?
Monica, that's actually a terrific question. I've been in many parts of the world, as you know, and met you in Colombia. What I find is there is, as you travel around the world, more similarities than differences with people. If you look for what's common and find those common elements, you tend to build those relationships very, very quickly. And you do celebrate the differences in culture, and you want to be relevant to the countries. But at the end of the day, I've always found there's more common ground than differences when you travel around the world. And that helps a lot in business, because you could then transfer best practices from countries and regions. And I always like the term glocal, which means global in terms of best practice sharing, but then to take local insights and local relevancy and adjust it for your particular country and your particular situation. And I've always followed that balance. That's been a successful formula for anything we've ever done around the world. So from a professional standpoint, I think that's, one of the things is to really understand what are the things you can share across borders, but then what are those things that you need to make sure that you tap into the insights of the local market and local customers. On the personal side, I really think that it's been a very rich and fulfilling career to be able to work with so many people from around the world in different countries and cultures. That the journey I've been on for the last, almost 40 years of working with one company, but around the world, has just enriched my understanding and appreciation for all of what the world has to offer. And I can't say enough about how rewarding it has been.
That's great. And I love that term that you use, because I think it's really important when you take, like all of the global experiences, not only in terms of, like best practices, but also in terms of different cultures to bring them local. So I think that's amazing. So you moved from Canada to Dubai in July 2021 to take on the role of CMO of GM Africa and Middle East operations. What types of challenges did you encounter in terms of building relationship with team members and clients in the region when all of your work at the outset was done remotely?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, and one that I think everybody could relate to, especially through the pandemic timeframe. To meet people virtually and to build relationships is not the easiest thing to do. And I guess one of the things that you need to do is have those one-on-one discussions and more informal discussions outside of a formal meeting to get to know people. If you just count on the formal meeting structure, what you find is you get to work right away, and it's very transactional in terms of what you need to get done through that meeting and the objectives you're trying to achieve. And you don't have the time to really understand the person and their background, their situation, perhaps their issues or concerns, but also, what they're grappling with at home, right? And so doing those one-on-ones and more, even having coffee virtually where you can both have coffee, even though you're not there together physically, I think tends to help build those relationships, even though it's virtual. And I found that those types of tactics are important. They're not even tactics, they're just to get to know people. And then you try to carve out a little bit of time at the beginning of a meeting too, because normally, when you're in a physical meeting room, people come in a little bit early, you have a little discussion and you get to warm things up before you get into the formal meeting. And when you have, virtual meetings where you're on Google or Teams meetings, it's difficult to kind of have that, right? So you got to almost engineer that time into a schedule is some of the tips and tricks I've discovered, Monica, that helped.
Yeah, definitely, because virtual is more, like to the point. We have a lot of meetings, the schedule is different. So definitely, I totally agree. And what are the top 3 things that leaders can do to create a good remote culture?
I guess it comes back to being authentic, and being able to share more than just business, I think is important. Even if you're, personally grappling with something at home, to, I guess, display some level of vulnerability to your team. Everybody has challenges, and mental health is important through this whole time, right? And people were grappling with hours melding into your personal time because you're at home. So just share the common sort of challenges and solutions together, I think, is one of the things. And to be authentic and, honest with what you're also going through, I think helps other people open up too. And I think we got to be, as leaders, caring as well. It's not the easiest thing to work from home sometimes. People were grappling with kids at home, school wasn't on continuously. So sometimes parents were having to grapple with kids at home, homeschooling, getting on different calls. If you have dual couple, people are balancing a lot. I think you need to be caring about the understanding of the situation. And then the last one is to be flexible. Part of the reason and benefits of working from home in a virtual remote environment is to allow people to have the flexibility to get their job done, but maybe a little bit more flexible in how they get it done from a work hour perspective. And that really gave everybody a little bit more freedom in that way. And, I think everybody cherished that through that time. So I think that is also important. So being authentic, caring, and flexibility is sort of some of those 3 things that I think everybody needs to remember as you create that remote working environment.
That's great. That's amazing. And I do think, not during the pandemic, of course, this remote work had an explosion, and flexibility is something that for sure everybody values, to have that life-work balance. So Sharon, thank you very much for being here with us. It's been a pleasure to see you again, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.
Monica, great to catch up. Thank you, and have a great conference.
Thank you. Welcome back to Boundaryless from Turing, and now continuing with the lineup of virtual speakers. We have a great speaker. So we are going to talk about a little bit about remote work before that was even a modality. and also about technology, because I think technology not only enables a lot of things, but also give us, like the opportunity to have a better experience in this remote work environment. So welcome, Jaime. He's the SVP Business Development and Partnerships at MODIFACE in L'Oreal. We are so happy to have you. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Monica. It's a pleasure.
Okay, so you've been working in a lot of different places. Tell us about your experience about managing remote teams and remote workers.
Sure. Yeah, so even though I'm born and raised in Madrid, I did most of my professional life abroad. I left home around 2002. And from then on, I started taking roles in regions or zones. So it was some sort of headquarters, right, that worked with different countries. So at the end of the day, the team that I was working with was not necessarily physically sitting with me at the same office or even the same country. So it was really something that you could work remote working, or you could name virtual teams. Those are teams that are made out of people who might not directly report to you or officially report to you in an org chart, but that have a common purpose, right? We have a common objective, and embarking them into this objective and being able to articulate what that objective is what really makes a team and what makes a team efficient. People really want to work to solve a problem together or to build something together, and that's what makes teams. It's not an org chart. So most of my roles have been something like that, right? So I was managing digital marketing for General Motors in Europe, and then I moved over to Miami to do pretty much the same with the Latin America, Africa, and Middle East zone. When I moved to Shanghai, I was pretty much managing a virtual team of digital experts also in the Asia Pacific zone, and finally I ended up with a global role. So again, what that basically means is that you're working with the countries, trying to understand what their needs are, trying to align and articulate a common objective, and actually recruit resources that are not necessarily belonging to your official team, and resources in all sorts of meanings, right? So it's either people, it's time, it's budget. So making sure that all those teams understand what's the biggest benefit, what's the greater good, and working together. That's what makes really efficient virtual teams.
Yeah, definitely. And also because at some point, I think all of us had, like co-workers or bosses or teams that were abroad, but we never thought, like as a remote work. As after the pandemic, of course, it changed a little bit the panorama. So in 2020, COVID hit, a new scenario for all companies and employees, and you change role and you change company. How was your experience in a remote environment, entering into a new company, creating a new role, and organizing a new team?
Yeah, that was obviously a shock to the system, to everybody. Obviously, 2020 was a huge turning point for everybody. It just happened for me that I had to change roles, company, teams, capabilities, skill sets. And I was sitting in my little house in Madrid and taking on a global role. So right before COVID hit, I was the chief marketing officer for L'Oreal in Spain. And I would call that a more of a traditional job setting, right? So I was going to an office. I did have a team. They did report to me. I had my resources, my budget. We sat face to face. And then I had to, we all had to go home. And this is where I started a new role, which is the one that I'm holding right now. I work at MODIFACE, which is a technology company that is fully owned by L'Oreal. MODIFACE does augmented reality and artificial intelligence services for the beauty industry, both beauty brands and beauty retailers. So imagine going from a traditional marketing role in a traditional setup, and suddenly starting to starting in a new role that had nothing to do with what I was doing before. It was all about technology. It was about product development, like digital product development. It had a commercial component to it because my clients are retailers around the world. So I had to develop also commercial relationships with people that I was not able to meet with. And then even within L'Oreal and MODIFACE, I had very different stakeholders. I had been at L'Oreal for 5 years before that, and I did develop a quite broad network of stakeholders within the marketing department, the marketing area. But this was a whole new scope. So trying to meet the right stakeholders in the right teams, commercial teams, technology teams, e-commerce teams, it was quite a challenge. But I think there was a couple of things that worked pretty well. One is that everybody was in the same spot. So we all had to do an extra effort to build this. It was not just me. So I think that helped everybody. And the other one is the scope that I was taking on was so new, so relevant to address and to handle and to deal with the situation. Because imagine in the makeup industry, there's a touch point, there's a consumer touch point that is absolutely critical. And I'm sure you have done this before. You've been at a store and you've taken a lipstick and you've tried it on your little, a little patch of skin in your hand.
Yeah.
And try to guess how it looks on your lips, right? So with COVID, that entire touch point just disappeared. But people at home would still be buying beauty products. It's true that makeup took a little bit of a dip, but skincare, for example, was a huge boost, and even hair color. People started, coloring their hair at home. So there was still a huge opportunity for beauty products. So suddenly, this technology, like augmented reality, for people to be able to try on makeup products from home, was so relevant that the scope that I took over was so relevant for the situation. E-commerce was the channel, the only channel that remained open, and technology came to save the day a little bit. So this was the other thing that helped with these connections and building this new role and connecting the dots. It was one, that everybody was in the same spot, and two, it was a very relevant scope for keeping the business alive. So aligning resources around that very objective and aligning resources around that very specific need was much easier than before. So I was pretty fortunate that that happened when it happened. And then what I saw is the year that we all spent more or less at home, not being able to buy regularly in stores physically, did help accelerate this new role, this new technology. So also showing early and quick success, I think, helps very much with people, with recruiting resources and aligning them towards an objective.
Yeah, definitely. And now that you mentioned, like the pandemic accelerated, digital transformation, innovation. And now, how do you see the role of technology with these augmented reality technologies that you mentioned within the remote work environment? How does this help? Because sometimes, also most of the company, the majority weren't prepared. So they needed to implement communications tools to keep at least, like this face-to-face, even though if it was virtual. So how do you think this is helping, and how do you see the future of this type of technologies? Because remote work for sure is going to still in a hybrid, environment. So how do you think about these technologies?
Sure. So obviously we've seen a huge acceleration of technologies that allow people to work remotely together, collaboratively. So, from video conferencing to collaborative software for project management. I mean, that's going to stay. I think obviously that's that existed before. Now it's just more pervasive and more broadly spread. But what I'm seeing also very interesting is some of these technologies that are coming to either create new spaces new working spaces, and I'm not talking about just the metaverse, right? But new opportunities for more people to work in more projects more often. Digital technologies have also come to break some of the limitations that physical boundaries, kind of put in some of the roles. And I'll give you a couple of examples that are more related to what I'm doing at MODIFACE. So again, at MODIFACE and the beauty industry, there's a massive component, which is what we call the beauty advisors. And beauty advisors can go from makeup professionals to skincare professionals to even dermatologists, right? And the relationships between these professionals and consumers were extremely physical. They were limited to a specific place, physical place, and even a specific schedule or a specific time, right? So if you wanted to see a dermatologist, you had to go to their practice, to their office between 9 and 5. And that was the time that you could interact with these people. Now, with this type of technologies, those boundaries are actually broken. And you can have, through not just video consultation, but augmented reality layered on top of video consultation, you can have professional dermatological diagnostics, for example, through artificial intelligence. This is something that, for example, we do. And through video calls with professionals that might not be sitting in the same office or city or even country than you are, you can have a personalized conversation like the one that we're having right now, but then layer on top of this either augmented reality filters. So say that you are looking for a specific makeup look for a specific event, and I can virtually try on you different makeup products thanks to augmented reality, at the same way as I would do if you were here with me, and I would apply those makeup products, or even using artificial intelligence to process your image and produce a personalized diagnostic of your skin.
Wow.
What we do is you submit an image, and our algorithm compares that image to thousands of other images that have been annotated by professional dermatologists. And based on that, we can predict what are the main concerns for your skin, and therefore recommend the products that are specifically matched for that. What this does is technology basically is democratizing the access to this type of diagnostics. So again, technology is creating these new spaces, these new opportunities that are not limited by time or space, and therefore it just creates a massive amount of new opportunities for working remotely or interacting remotely.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, because I think, like with the pandemic, of course, all the things were online, virtual, and now sometimes we don't want to go out, but we want things easier, right? So I think this is great. And talking about, let's say, communication platforms or remote work, like technologies, do you have today something that can help us, or like during virtual meetings, conferences, do something so we can have, like we have the backgrounds, but something that can help us without doing a fancy makeup, but make us look better in the camera?
Absolutely. I mean, we are working with most of the big video conferencing and meeting kind of software, so that you can actually the same way as you apply backgrounds when you're talking to people, you could apply makeup looks, right? And that's not just for the fun of it. It's not just a filter. It also opens new business opportunities and new business models. So imagine you are using Microsoft Teams, for example, and on the right hand side you can apply some of the backgrounds, but you can also subscribe to curated makeup looks from specific makeup artists that you like, right? And you don't need to buy the physical product, but maybe you buy a subscription to virtual looks. So whenever you connect on Teams or on Google Meet or any other platform, you can apply those looks that you have paid for, you have subscribed to, and maybe those looks, you have 3 looks per month, or you have different curated looks by celebrities. So those suddenly become new business models, and we might see beauty companies not just selling beauty products, but maybe beauty services or virtual beauty subscriptions that you can use not just on real life interaction software like this one, but even on the metaverse, and maybe you can carry over those looks to represent yourself in the metaverse. There's a huge opportunity now for new creators on the metaverse, and obviously the way you look, the way you represent yourself is going to be one of the most important layers. So that again opens up huge new opportunities for beauty creators, beauty brands, and all sorts of contributors to this new economy.
That's great. I cannot wait to try them. So thank you so much, Jaime, for being here with us. And for sure, we will be looking forward of what is coming in order to support not only the technologies of the remote work, but how can we have a better experience when we are working on a remote environment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica. It's been a pleasure.
Sometimes when you try something new, it changes your whole life. This is what happens with me when I joined Turing. Hi, my name is Manaf. I'm from Amman, Jordan. I work with Turing as a front-end developer. I have 6 years of software development expertise. I'm expert in React and React Native and JavaScript and web-related technologies. Before COVID-19, the idea of remote work sounded very risky. But during the pandemic, when I started working remotely, I decided never to come back to the office. When I found Turing, I was very compelled by the idea, working with US top companies. I watched a couple of videos on YouTube about Turing, and then I decided to apply. I went through the tests and review process, and I found that these jobs must be pretty exclusive because the test and the interview process were pretty challenging. After clearing the interview process, I was hired by one of the US top clients. Unlike the traditional job boards, I found Turing process were fast and more efficient. Turing has changed my life, both professionally and personally. I got to work with amazing US companies and save so much time and work from anywhere with a flexible timing. I've been able to raise my technical skills and expertise while working with the best minds across the globe. The opportunity to share my suggestions and my ideas openly with my colleagues makes this job more fulfilling. Apart from work, I spend most of the time with my family.
Bye. Bye.
I'm proud to say that I live a happier and healthier life. I'm also doing well financially because Turing provides a higher compensation. I get to save a lot more while working from home. Turing provides full-time opportunities, so I don't have to apply for other jobs.
If you want to work with elite US companies, apply today and go boundaryless with Turing.